This is a video about how I assemble and customize my Ikea Pax wardrobe. Ikea offers many choices in colors, doors, and hardware, but I still want to create something unique to me. Which is why, in this video, I'll walk you through the complex assembly of an Ikea Pax wardrobe with a twist. I added wallpaper to the back panel to give it a warmer, cozier look. It's a simple, renter-friendly way to add personality without changing the walls, perfect for making any space feel more like home. My wardrobe design was inspired by antique trunks, with their beautiful lined interiors that make opening them feel like a unique and special experience. So let's get started. The first thing that I did is I bought a wallpaper that would match the dimensions of the back panel. The back panel is 1 meter wide and it splits in the middle, so I looked for a wallpaper that is at least 50 centimeters wide. Mine is 53. That way I can add 2 layers next to each other, meeting right in the middle. I also looked for a very simple, repeatable pattern that would easily match another wallpaper sheet without leaving too much material on the upper or lower side. Besides the correct dimensions, I like that the wallpaper has a pleasant texture to the touch and a pastel green color that is subdued compared to the other items in the wardrobe. It is noticeable, but it doesn't stand out. It makes the wardrobe look special, but it doesn't really overpower the items in the wardrobe. When you're ready to start putting everything together, make sure you have enough space in the room. I have freed an entire room so I can lay out all the panels of the wardrobe, especially for painting the wallpaper on the back panel. You need some room to work. Also, make sure you have everything. I have taken a few spontaneous trips to the hardware store because I was missing some things. For the wallpaper gluing process, I have used the following tools: a small recipient with water, powder glue, 2 smaller brushes that I use to spread glue evenly on the surface of the back panel, and 1 bigger brush which I use to even out the surface of the wallpaper and get rid of the air bubbles. The rollers are optional, but I ended up not using them. I found that the brushes were more helpful in this case. Alright, first I laid out the wallpaper sheets just to get an idea of the final look, but also to understand how the sheets would fit together. So there's quite a bit of pushing and pulling and sometimes turning to get them to fit. Then it dawned on me that if I were doing this with the sheets glued, I would have glue all over the floor, and I don't want that. So I decided to spread out some flip chart paper all around the back panel. That way, if I had to move the glued wallpaper sheets a little, my floor would be protected by the flip chart paper. It's time to mix the powder glue with the water. I didn't quite understand the ratio there between powder glue and water. I believe I made a stronger glue than the advised ratio on the product description, but the surface on which it will be glued is very glossy, so I needed that extra strength. You mix the glue until it becomes a uniform mass. Try to get rid of the clumps as much as you can by mixing the powder really well. Once I had an acceptable glue mass, I took a big brush and spread the glue on the back of the wardrobe. I have to say that the process was very quick and satisfying. Make sure to get all the corners and edges. You can use the same brush or a smaller brush for that. Because I had paper protecting my floor all around, I felt comfortable using the same brush. You then add the wallpaper sheets and hope you remember where the pattern matches. I, however, just pushed the sheets back and forth until I found where they met. I wouldn't recommend you do that. Once you have them in place, you can use the big brush to brush the air bubbles out of the wallpaper gently. You brush from the center of the paper towards the nearest edge. Brush, brush, brush. As you brush, also gently touch the surface of the wallpaper. Your hand will tell you about air bubbles that your eyes might not be able to see. When I finished, it was very late, so the next day I looked again and I noticed that some of the edges were not so well glued, probably from all the pushing and pulling. So I added another coat of glue where it seemed necessary and added some heavy books to make the wallpaper stick. I let the wallpaper dry until the afternoon, and then I took a cutting mat and cut the edges that were sticking out. I didn't cut them right at the edge of the panel because I was afraid some edges would peel off. Because the wallpaper is 53 centimeters wide and 3 centimeters would stick out over the edge anyway, I left a couple of centimeters over the edge at the upper and lower side of the panel too. Once the wallpaper is glued to the back of the wardrobe, I pull it to the side to make room for the assembly of the rest of the wardrobe. The next phase is the assembly of a normal IKEA Pax wardrobe, but here and there I found some solutions that were not in the assembly sheet, so if you're curious about them, do stick around. For this phase I have the following tools: a hammer, an electrical screwdriver, and a hand screwdriver with 2 different tips, a Phillips head and a flathead. We start by placing the 2 side panels next to each other in such a way that the finished edges are in the middle next to each other. The holes on each panel mirror each other, and the unfinished edges are on the outside. We place the L brackets against the unfinished edges at the top. We count 2 holes from the top, and we place the L brackets over the 3rd and 4th hole. They have to look more or less like this. We then start placing the cam screws over the L brackets on the top row, 3 on each panel. And then 3 more cam screws are placed on each panel on the lower side. In the end, it has to look like this. Have a look at your panel and make sure the cam screws are in the same holes. IKEA advises against stepping on the panels, and you shouldn't. But because of the lack of space, I stepped on them a lot. I also bumped my toes into the cam screws. Do as IKEA says, not like I do in this case. As a second step, we start placing the wooden dowels in the top and the bottom panels. Make sure to use the hammer to hit them gently so they fit in. We then turn one of the dividing panels upside down and add the brackets of the little feet of the wardrobe. Just use a hammer and hit them until they are deep into the panel. In the end, they should look like this. We then lock the top and the bottom panel in one of the side panels over the cam screws. We place the bottom panel in such a way that the little feet are facing the finished edge of the side panel. We also add the 2 smaller panels at the bottom of the wardrobe. They should be at the extremities of the panel. No holes should be left outside. To be sure that the panels don't break, we quickly add the cam locks to lock the cam screws in place. You place them over the cam screws in the holes and turn them in such a way that you can feel them holding the cam screws in place. Now when it comes to placing the second side panel, it doesn't quite work as IKEA explains it, because the panel is very long and thin. And when you place it over, you also have to find the cam screws and the dowels that would fit into your panel. And of course, you can't right away. This might not be the pro handyman solution, but here's how I solved this. I took 3 plastic boxes and stacked them over each other, and they almost reached 1 meter height, which is the width of my wardrobe. That way, I could take my time finding the connection points on each side and not have to worry about breaking the panel. You can see the side panel resting on my boxes, which means that it would have probably broken by the time I found the interlocking screws. Just like you did on the lower side of the panel, you can add your cam locks on the upper side of the wardrobe to lock those cam screws. Finally, adding the back panel with the wallpaper is no small challenge. Because I left the wallpaper a couple of centimeters longer, I'm not able to see in which places the panel falls into place and where it doesn't. And so as I try to match the corners, the back panel keeps falling into the middle. And the more I push and pull, the more likely it is that the wallpaper would tear and break. I can't do this that many times. So it dawns on me that I already have the solution. I can do what I did before with the side panel. I can use a prop in the middle of the wardrobe to hold the back panel in place until I can fit it into the right corners. It doesn't have to be a very elaborate prop. I took another box, a drawer, a shelf, some more books, and 1 more shelf until I reached the depth of the wardrobe. Obviously, this time worked. I managed to pull the panel in place and add all the nails. Keep in mind that the strip in which you add the nails is very thin, and you need to be very careful not to miss it. By adding the nails, you also hold the wallpaper edges sticking out of the panel in place, giving the wardrobe a classy look. And here's the finished look of the wardrobe. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know how it turned out for you.